What's going on, guys? All right, today I'm going to talk about credit. So, first thing when you're talking about credit is you got to know where you're at. So, if you're not signed up for credit monitoring service like Credit Karma or Credit Check Total, those are really good sites to get an idea what your credit score is, check out what your derogatory marks are. But here I'm going to talk about a strategy of building your credit. So, ultimately what we want to look at is how can you start to build your credit. And the easy answer is you got to use your credit. You have to use credit. So if you want to build it, you got to use it. So what I want to show you here is we're at bankrate.com. Let's go into credit cards overview. Now before you do this, it's really pretty important that you figure out where you're at. So like what your credit score is. If you're in the 500, 600, 700, 800s, figure out where you're at. The reason is we're going to be able to look at, if you have bad credit, there's going to be certain cards that you can actually get. And if you have better credit, I wouldn't recommend opening some of these cards. You want to get some better cards. But if you're searching this, you probably have some issues with credit. So either you got no credit or you got bad credit, in which case, there's a couple options here, right? Like if you have no credit history, you can get a card like this where, it looks like, there's a annual fee involved, which if you have no credit and you can't get any other cards, then sometimes it makes sense to get something like this. But basically, you've got other options. Probably the first one that I would go after before going to some of those no-name cards is that Capital One card, right? Because typically if you got no credit history or bad credit, you're going to get options. So go here and apply for this card. Now, once you open a credit card, you want to use your card for paying expenses or for typical things that you buy. So initially, groceries or gas or whatever it is, use it for those things and pay it. Because when you use it and pay it right away, and you want to use your cards when you get them, that's the thing, is you want to use your cards. So when you get it, use it and pay it, right? After a few months of that, your credit score is going to start to develop. I think when I first started rebuilding my credit, I went from below 5 to, well, not below 5, but in the low 5s. This was the first card that I opened. And within 6 months, I had 3 or 4 other cards open, and I started getting some really good lines after. But every time I opened a card, I used it and paid it. So you want to have good payment history. The other thing is every time you open a card, set up your account, go in and set up auto pay, so you don't miss anything. So you don't get charged fees. It automatically pays your minimum payment in the event that you need to pay your card, and that's just a really good policy to have. So if you got mediocre or okay credit and you want to do more, you want to get better lines, look at the credit cards based on your credit score. So in other words, here you can look at cards by category: no annual fee, cashback, balance transfer, 0% interest, rewards. So there's a lot of different factors in credit cards, right? If you got good to excellent credit, Chase is good. Now, here's the other tip is when you go to apply for your Chase cards, apply for all the Chase cards. So there might be multiple cards that you would qualify for that you can apply all at once. And that way you get only one inquiry. The inquiries get bundled. So every time you open an account or hit your credit, it puts an inquiry on your credit report. And for a lot of you, if you're just building credit, that's something that you're going to be aware of. You are going to rack up inquiries. It's not a bad thing, but it's something that you want to be mindful of because you don't want to go crazy with it. But pick some of the top cards to apply for based on your credit score. And that's why it's important to track and monitor your credit. Because if you know your score, you know what you can apply for. And I don't recommend applying for anything unless you have the score, because otherwise you'll get a useless inquiry on your credit. So the other thing is If you have good credit and you've got a card with a stale balance per se, you could apply for something like this, where you get a balance transfer and it doesn't cost you anything. You might pay a little bit of a fee, a percentage of the dollar amount that you transfer it over to 0% for 18 months. And that's how you defer fees and payments. Now, once you have a lot of credit cards, once you have a lot of credit lines, you can move debt around as it suits you to avoid these high interest rates. And this is what people don't understand. If you have good credit, you can always find cheap money. You can always find a way to store your cheap debt. And I'm not suggesting that you store debt, but if you have to, store it cheaply. Don't pay interest on it. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Here's another example: 0% intro for 18 months. So the other thing is, use it strategically, because, apply for your cards strategically, because a lot of these cards, new cards, they'll give you 0% for 18 months. And, if you need to have a purchase, or if you have some debt that you want to move around, use it mindfully. Don't apply for all the cards at once. Now, you can start to open up credit lines, and I'm going to tell you this: you do want to open lots of lines. You want to have lots of available credit, because your credit usage also reports to your credit report. So if you've got $100,000 in credit lines, and that's very doable, if you're anywhere near a 700, and you have a decent income, you should be able to get lots of offers like this: 0% APR for 15 months, 18 months, whatever it is. Most of these cards have zero annual fee. Here's an example. If you're a 670 and above, apply for Chase Freedom Unlimited. Let's go up to the other one and apply for the Chase. Oh, is that the same one? Chase Freedom Unlimited. There might be the Sapphire is another one. Apply for those cards that are going to have similar inquiries. Do that at the same time. And then, you want to go in little bouts. Like, if you're going to apply for 2-3 different cards, and then you're going to get approved. And from there, wait some time, allow some time for that to report to your credit. Your credit's it's going to change a little bit over time. It might go up, it might go down a little bit, but eventually it's going to go up, especially when you start establishing good payment history. And you establish good payment history, you don't miss payments, and you pay your cards. Yeah, Sapphire Preferred, again, another 670. So you can apply for this card, the Sapphire Preferred. You can also apply for this Freedom Unlimited. That inquiry will get bundled, so you can go ahead and apply for both of them on the same day. And if you get approved, now I wouldn't do this unless you got a little bit better over 670 to make sure that you get approved. Again, you don't want to apply for cards unless you know you're going to get approved. And a lot of that has to do with how much debt do you carry, what's your income, and they're really looking at DTI, debt to income ratio, and your income. So, but overall, this is a really good site to use as a reference. Look at the different cards that are there, and try to avoid cards with fees until you get to a certain point. There's really not a lot with annual fees, but Amex, for example, has a pretty high fee. And unless you make good money and it's something that you find a lot of value in, I wouldn't necessarily go for that right away. But it is a great card to have, by the way. So this is just kind of an intro to how to build credit. I think there's some more advanced strategies when you learn about a little bit about infinite banking and velocity banking, how you can use these cards to your example, how you can use debt instruments to manage your finances, to pay debt, pay other debts, to transfer debts. And so there's a lot of interesting things that you can do that are legal, by the way, of course, and ethical. But you also want to understand that when you use credit cards, the banks make money. When you go swipe this at the store, the store is making money. The credit card manufacturer charges fees on their terminals and stuff like that. So everybody's making money. And so credit cards are just great. The other thing is, if you buy anything and it turns out not to be good, or you have an issue with it, you can always dispute the charge. So if somebody, if you buy something online and it wasn't, it doesn't come, or if it's not as described, you can dispute the charge. So you have a little bit more safety with using credit cards than buying something with a debit card. So there's a lot of advantages to credit. So this is a good way to start building your credit. Apply for credit cards, open lines, use them, pay them as they're designed, and your credit score will go up. So that's all I have for today. Hope you guys like the video. Leave me a comment like, what is your credit score? What kind of things are you looking to do with it? And questions. Post questions. Thanks, guys.